It's good morning. It's another day, the first day of the official week. I think it's one of the days where we are kickstarting again with our series. As you are aware that we have been going for the past few months, focusing on the movement of dangerous goods. For the purpose of introduction, my name is Lebole. I am the supply chain coach. And we are running with a lot of sessions, webinars, with the intent of helping you guys as entrepreneurs and also professionals in logistics to understand tracking on its totality, transportation, and ensuring that we are running with the goods, reducing risk for our clients. So today, again, we are continuing with our session with Mr. Richard Durant. We are talking about the transportation of solid dangerous goods. As you are aware, for the past few months, we had introduced you to dangerous goods, getting you to understand what the products are, different classification. We have had a lot of discussions around the movement of gas products, the movement of liquid dangerous products as well. So today we are talking about solid dangerous goods. So for everyone that is joining us on LinkedIn, on Zoom, on Facebook, a special welcome to yourself. I know you always look forward to our sessions. And like I said, you know the rules. You know the rules when it comes to the chat box. If you have some questions, please post them on the chat box. If you are on LinkedIn, I will ensure that I check your responses, your questions as well, so that Richard can respond to yourself. Use this opportunity to learn, use this opportunity to ask the questions that are relevant. And remember, there is no stupid questions. We want to empower you. We want to make sure that you understand the transportation of goods, especially the dangerous one where everyone is always afraid. So Richard is the expert in the industry, and he will be helping us and sharing the insights from the industry on how you transport safely in the companies, how you reduce the risk as well. Richard, a special welcome to yourself. And again, thank you for making yourself available this morning. We always appreciate your time. I think from my side, I appreciate more than anything else because you make our job easier from the AWISCA perspective, from SingPoint and the work that you are doing to touch other people's lives and ensuring that they understand logistics, they understand transportation. So Richard will introduce himself and he will proceed with the presentation for today. And again, guys, please make sure that you use this opportunity to ask the questions if you do not understand. Thank you, Richard. You can proceed.
Thank you, Lebo. Very kind of you to include me in your processes. And we were just talking a little bit offline earlier. I actually find this process a good refresher for me as well, because for example, what we're talking about today is not something that I deal with every day. So it's been a good refresher for me. So it helps all of us, which is a great benefit. So let me try and share my screen and see whether we can get on with the process. All right, then. Okay. So yes, transport of dangerous goods by road. Good morning, everybody. Nice to have everybody online with us again. As Lebo said, we're going to be talking today about class 4. It is a bit of a anomaly. It's known as flammable solids, but they are not all solid materials, but we'll get into that detail just now. Again, just a recap, my name is Richard Durant. My company is Transcheck Consulting and Auditing. My details are up on the screen. You can get hold of me preferably through my email, but if there's something urgent, you can give me a call, or you can speak to Lebo or Rose, and they can forward information through to me. Now I need to. Okay. So as I was saying, the class 4 is commonly known as flammable solids, but for simplicity, this class can also be referred to as other flammable substances. So we spoke about last time round, we spoke about flammable liquids, which is a class 3. Now we're talking about other flammable substances. So as I said, they're not all solids. Some of them are liquids, but the majority of them are solids or granular products and that type of thing, but we'll get into that detail. So this class deals with substances other than explosives, which are readily combustible or can contribute to a fire, or can cause or contribute to a fire. So they're split into 3 divisions or subclasses. 4.1 is your flammable solids. 4.2 is spontaneously combustible material. And 4.3 is dangerous when wet. So they, as I said, they're not necessarily all solids, but they fall into one of those 3 categories. So if we look at the flammable solids initially, which the definition is materials which are easily lit by a spark or flame, or which can burn readily, or which can catch fire through friction. So readily can be lit by a spark or flame, burn readily, and catch fire through friction. On the screen is the hazard warning diamond for flammable solids. Very distinctive sign. As I've said in the previous sessions, over time, that flammable solid that is written on the pictogram or on the diamond will fall away, and it will just have the flame and the red bars, let's call it, and the 4.1 at the bottom. Sometimes it might not even have 4.1; it might just have a 4, telling you that it is a class 4. But for now, that's the hazard warning sign for flammable solids. In my presentation, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the transport directly, but I'm going to go more into the products and the risks and the hazards of those products, which relate back to the transportation. So we'll spend more time looking at the actual products and then get on to some of the issues around the transportation. A very busy slide, but this is I felt was the best way to describe some of the products. Also, just want to give acknowledgements to Foresight Publications for the table that's shown here. If you are needing information on transport of dangerous goods in South Africa, they produce what they call the South African Orange Book. It's quite a manual of documents. Let's call it a summary of a lot of our SABS SAN standards, as well as including some of the United Nations requirements. So if you are getting into it, it might be worth looking at acquiring one of those documents, and is a very good handbook. So this information is out of their handbook, or their Orange Book, as they call it. So if we just look down, we're not going to go through all of them, but just to give you an example for the very first one, which is camphor. Here it's a UN 2717. It's used as a moss repellent, and it's also used in the manufacture of plastics, lacquers, and paints. If we go to the third one, matches. We all know matches pretty well. UN 1944. Book matches are rated as the biggest single cause of fires in aircraft in aircraft holes, due to the vibration caused by aircraft. So that's where the friction can come in. If they're moving continuously, rubbing against each other, they can generate heat which is sufficient for them to ignite. We go down to even like rubber scrap. There's a process in South Africa now which the recycling of scrap car and truck tires, and I would imagine that could also be classed as a hazardous material, depending on the quantities being transported, being moved around. Again, the heat generated from that rubber can ignite that rubber and cause a fire. Then sulfur. We'll talk a little bit more about sulfur. Sulfur, UN 1345, is widely used in the chemical industry. It's linked with your vulcanizing in rubber, used as match heads and to produce black powder, which is goes into explosives. And the mining industry uses a lot of sulfur in the production of sulfuric acid. And we'll talk a little bit more about that just now. And then even things like wax polish with the UN 1375, shoe polish is hazardous in transport in quantities. Floor and furniture polish. It's made up of blends of wax and naphtha. So things that we use on a day-to-day basis, or have some dealings with on a day-to-day basis, can be classed as flammable solids, depending on their quantities and the situation they're in. Right at the bottom, this flammable solids included in this class are desensitized explosives in the class 1 category, which is explosives, which are soaked or wetted with enough alcohol or water to suppress their explosive properties. I'm not an explosives expert, but yes, there again, we have explosives could be categorized as flammable solids as well. So I'll go on to some examples of these a little bit later. If we go to the next category, which is your 4.2, is your spontaneously combustible materials, which are materials, liquids or solids, which generate their own heat and even in small quantities will self-ignite when exposed to air for 5 minutes or less. Also included are solids which heat up when exposed to air, usually in large amounts and after a long time. So spontaneous combustion, the hazard warning diamond, again, this one just shows it as a class 4, but very, very different from the last one, but also very, very distinctive of diamond and let's call it branding for this material. So some of these materials also, this comes out of Foresight Publications. Activated carbon. So carbon is used a lot in the purification of water. Cotton waste, waste materials, again, packed together, could generate heat, they could ignite themselves. Fish meal, we have a large fishing industry in South Africa. The meal that comes out of the waste, or let's call it the offcuts, and which then goes into fertilizer production, can also be spontaneously combustible. Metal shavings, which seems strange, but there's often oil on the metal shavings, and so that can also lead to spontaneous combustion. Oil and seed cake, similar. It's again, it's got an oil content to it. Sodium sulfide. I don't know sodium sulfide too well, but is used in the removal of hair from hides in the tanning industry. And white phosphorus which is used to make phosphoric acid and other chemicals used to make fertilizers and also in military use. So not very common products there, but those are a list of some of the spontaneous combustible materials. Then dangerous when wet are substances which on contact with moisture may catch fire by themselves, or which may emit flammable or toxic gases. Again, a very distinctive diamond and marked as a class 4. Yeah, I'm going to spend a little bit more time because I've got some direct experience in one of these particular products, but there's so let's go straight down to, well, the calcium carbide is the one that I want to talk about. UN1402 is a source of acetylene. They use acetylene a lot in welding and in steel making. When it comes in contact with water or moisture in air, calcium carbide rapidly evolves acetylene. It produces acetylene, a highly flammable gas which may be ignited by the heat of the reaction. The one just below that, lithium. This is now not lithium that goes into lithium batteries, but that goes into medical preparations. That also is dangerous when wet. Magnesium powder, which goes a lot into fireworks, flares, and in welding rods. So quite a lot of, again, products which are relatively common. So really, from a transport point of view, all these products are highly sensitive and require careful consideration and planning. So just a word of warning, don't rush in and start trying to transport or handle these products without understanding the implications, the risks of these products. Otherwise, you could be getting yourself into trouble. So be very aware of those pictograms, and as I say, take due caution before you jump in and start getting too involved with them. So some of the modes of transport, these are just some examples. Dry bulk tankers, which I'll explain in some detail shortly. Your drums and packages. So similar to what we've spoken about before. We've spoken about before liquid tankers. We haven't spoken about dry bulk tankers. Very different equipment, and I will go into a bit more detail on that one now. So you have your standard flat deck trailers, which can be used to load granular products, either in bags or drums, normally. So your normal run-of-the-mill flat deck trailer or interlink. But yeah, that's what most of us would know as a standard looking trailer. Then the other one that I want, then there's sulfur, which also goes onto flat deck trailers. I want to go into a little bit more detail on sulfur. Sulfur has a UN number of 1345 and is a class 4.1. And as we said just now, these are materials which are easily lit by a spark or flame, or which burns readily, or which can catch fire through friction. So sulfur is widely used in the chemical industry, vulcanizing rubber, match heads, etc. we said just now, and the mining industry uses in the production of sulfuric acid. So the second bullet point is around the mining industry. and it's used for the production of sulfuric acid, but as well as the extraction of copper. So it goes into that. A lot of the sulfur that we have in, I'm going to say, Southern Africa, some of it is imported through Richards Bay, through the port of Richards Bay, and other sulfur is manufactured by Sasol in Secunda. It is generally packed into 1-ton bulk bags. On the right of your screen is just a little example or picture of what bulk bags are. They're normally a 1-ton capacity. The product is loaded loose into those bags. And once these bags are loaded onto the trucks, they're normally transported to Zambia and to the DRC on a backload basis for copper being exported out of Durban. So the copper is coming out of the copper belts in Zambia and DRC down to Durban. Some of it goes to City Deep in Johannesburg and then gets put on rail. Some of it goes straight to Durban for export. And then those transporters that have taken the copper down, some of them will go up to Richards Bay to load sulfur. Others will come back to Secunda to load sulfur out of Sasol. And that goes back to the mine. So it's a nice back-to-back backload situation in most instances. Not all, it's not a 100% match load for load, but it does help to reduce the costs on being able to do backloads. If you travel, I was in Polokwane on Friday. And if you're traveling on the N1 up towards Polokwane, between Pretoria and Polokwane, often you'll get a smell, very distinctive, unpleasant odor. And the information I have, it's reminiscent of rotting cabbages or spoiled eggs. But I think that's more your liquid sulfur. The dry sulfur has got a very arid, I don't know if that's the right term, but it's a very distinctive, unpleasant smell. So if you're driving along and suddenly you smell this unpleasant, harsh smell, there's a very good chance you're either behind a truck that's transporting it or a truck that is actually traveling in the opposite direction to you. And so you'll know when you smell it, because it's a very, very distinctive smell. So those bags are loaded onto the trucks and covered with a tarpaulin, and they are very tightly packed together to prevent any friction, but nothing too dramatic with regard to the transport. But if something does happen and one of those bags catches a light, then that whole load and possibly your vehicle could burn out as well. So, and there is a lot of large quantities of sulfur being transported. The other mode of transport, as I mentioned just now, is your dry bulk tankers. The image that's on your screen at the moment is we're going to call it a cement tanker. This one is a picture of one built by GRW Engineering. Very similar tanker would be used to transport your granular, any granular product. Things like flour, cement, sugar, all go into similar tankers like this. It is a high end pressure vessel, because the offloading of this tanker is done using air pressure. You'll see on the back of this tanker is a little engine on the back. That's what we would call the blower. It's a little diesel engine, which then, once started, drives a compressor, which then pumps air into this tanker, and that air, when it gets up to a certain pressure, then pushes the product out of the tanker through the various discharge lines into silos, and that's how these particular tankers are designed and built. So it's built as I said, as a pressure vessel. I think they rated up to about 600 kPa. So that's quite a high pressure for such a big volume of air. And if not handled correctly, can be very, very dangerous. So again, not something to mess around with, but perfectly safe if they're handled in a proper manner. So this particular type of product, and I'm going to talk about type of tanker, is used to transport calcium carbide. So calcium carbide, and this is where I've had some not so good experience with this product. Calcium carbide, UN1402, is a class 4.3, dangerous when wet, when in contact with water or moisture. In air, calcium carbide evolves acetylene, a highly flammable gas which may be ignited by the heat of the reaction. So the company I used to work for, used to transport calcium carbide from a factory in Newcastle in KwaZulu-Natal, and it went down to another factory where they used the calcium carbide in Richards Bay. So because it's so sensitive to moisture, before the tanker is loaded, the empty tank is purged with nitrogen gas. So they pump nitrogen gas into that tanker to purge, to remove as much oxygen as they can, oxygen that's in the air. They then top load the tanker. So just to go back a slide, you'll see on the top of that tanker, of the picture, there's 3 hatches on the top. Sometimes there's only 1 hatch, depending on the design of the tanker. But they would put a chute into one of those, or into each one of those hatches or manholes, and then basically drop the product into the tanker through that chute. Once the tanker is loaded to its required capacity, then what they term a nitrogen blanket. So it had nitrogen in the tanker. The product is dropped into the tanker, which displaces the nitrogen that's in the tanker. And then once the product is loaded, then they inject more nitrogen into the top of the tanker as a blanket between the top of the product and let's call it the ullage in the top of the tanker, to make sure that there's no air or oxygen in that tanker. So nitrogen is pumped in, and the tanker is pressurized with that nitrogen to prevent or to eliminate the presence of any air or moisture in the tanker. Then this tanker is basically hermetically sealed to keep out gases, or to keep gases, liquids, and other substances from entering or escaping from the tanker. So it is a sealed tanker. Nothing can get in, nothing can get out, and that's when it's then put on the road to go and do its deliveries. The incident that we had, the last bullet point, is in the event of an accident, and if that tanker is compromised, is when the problem starts. So sorry, apologies for the spelling error, it's Melmoth KZN accident. We had a tanker that loaded in Newcastle and was traveling down to Richards Bay, down through the hills of KwaZulu-Natal, through what the sort of shortest route going down, and it was raining, and a truck coming in the opposite direction cut a corner and managed to pierce the shell of the tanker. And well, it wasn't just a piercing; it cut a slit in the side of in the sort of top third of the tanker, which then released the nitrogen. And it was raining, so moisture, rainwater got into that tanker. And that tanker, the product then started generating acetylene gas. And that acetylene gas, as we said in the first, the reaction of that ignited the acetylene gas. And that tanker burnt for 2 weeks. We managed to tow the tanker to a safe place. We unhitched the tanker and let it burn for 2 weeks. And eventually we went there, we took the wheels off it. And by the time it was burnt out, it was a complete write-off and had to be cut up for scrap. So not a nice experience. We spent many hours trying to see how we could save the product, save the tanker. But once it started burning, it burnt and burnt and burnt. And eventually till all the product was burnt out. And as I say, from the heat, and it was a complete write-off. So not a good experience. So again, what I'm trying to say is it may seem like a fairly easy exercise, but if something goes wrong, that's when you can land up with problems.
Maybe Richard,
yeah, carry on.
Before we proceed, I'm not sure if anyone has got any questions and so forth, because this is very critical. And Richard, I think I understand with some of the entrepreneurs, and also I think in corporate, when we recruit a lot of schedulers, logistics managers, the typical kind of experience that is necessary in managing this. It's very crucial because of the nature of the business, and when people start thinking around the same example that you've given to us, that's when people start shying away from the industry perspective. So what you are sharing with us, I think it's very critical in that anyone that is in the industry, or they want to penetrate the industry, or anyone from the professional perspective, because I get a lot of from a Whisker perspective, a lot of professionals that are in logistics and very interested in really moving across product streams within the companies, and they always indicate how critical this is. So for everyone that really wants to venture in this industry, guys, please make sure that you ask the questions, get the clarity around it, because what has been shared with us is very important. Richard, just tapping onto the example and some of the product streams that you have shared with everyone. I like the example that you have used in terms of sulfur and the backloads. I know everyone that really focus on cross-border business, and I like the fact that you used DRC, especially where there's a lot of mines, Zambia, where there's a lot of mines as well. From the cross-border perspective, the requirements, people are always wary around the backloads. So my question, you used a good example in terms of copper, in terms of sulfur moving into those specific countries. What about other products? Are they interchangeable? And I'm asking for the purpose of everyone understanding that there are certain products, obviously you can't use the same tanker for the same products, especially because of the nature of the business. So my question is, out of all the product streams that you have shared with us, are there those that are not are not interchangeable or reusable in terms of using the tanker? If you can provide some clarity on that, thank you.
Thanks, Lebo. Yeah, one of the disadvantages of tankers is they are often dedicated to particular products. In South Africa, there are a number of wash bays, which are accredited wash bays where you can get your tanker washed out, but that's more for liquid tankers. A dry bulk tanker, as an example I showed you, it has in the bottom of the tanker, it has aeration pads which the air is pumped through those pads, and it then enables the air to it's like a big filter pad, so the air can get through it, but the product can't. So the product stays above the pad, the air comes in underneath and filters or gets pushed through the pad and starts aerating the product, and that's part of how it starts pumping out the product, or ejecting the product, if you want to call it. So if those pads get wet, or if you want to clean out your tanker, you've got to unbolt the bottoms of each one of those, let's call it cones on the tanker, and take out the pads and wash out. So it's a big job. It's not something you're going to want to do on a regular basis. It's only if the tank is really going in for maintenance, or sometimes over time there's a product buildup in the bottom of the tanker or on the sides of the tanker. You want to get in and clean it out. Then you would remove those cones and then those aeration pads. But no, on a very seldom can you do a backload on a dry bulk tanker. As I said, you know, some of them are food products. If you're transporting flour, if you're transporting sugar, those type of things are food products. The cleanliness and care of that, the interior of that tank are critical. Otherwise, you can contaminate your product, and you're going to have claims and you know, health issues around that. So the short answer, Lebo, no, there's not a lot you can do on a tanker, on a dry bulk tanker from a backload basis. On the copper, as you said, on a flat deck trailer, there's a large amount of copper coming down. You'll see them again if you're traveling on the N1. Now they all travel in convoy from a security point of view. I believe a load of copper on one truck is valued at about 6 million rand per load. So you'll see 5, 6, 8, 10 trucks traveling in convoy. Normally there's an armed escort somewhere around, either in a separate vehicle or sometimes on the vehicle themselves, all being tracked with the sophisticated tracking systems, cameras, all sorts. So very high value product coming down. Then now you need to get back to Zambia or the DRC. As I said, sulfur might be one of the products. The others are just general products, mining materials, tires, lubricants. So again, it's the copper might sound like quite a lucrative business, but a large portion of the rate is based on you being able to get a backload to get you back into Zambia or back into the copper belt. So even on the flat deck where let's call it your backload ability is much easier, the availability of backloads is also in fairly short supply, again, because of the number of vehicles that are transporting. So Lebo, I hope that answers your question.
It definitely does, Richard, because I always want everyone to understand the nature of the business. And when you start looking at the costs, I mean, you bring another good aspect in terms of the value of that copper. If you're talking about 6 million, so when you are on the other side, you have to start thinking around goods in transit insurance. How much will the GIT really be from the business perspective? Because you need to be able to cover the risk, your insurance around that. And these are the things to consider when you are in this industry. That is not just only about that value of the copper, is that look at your rates, how you build up your costs, your backloads as well. But over and above that, your fixed costs, which are very necessary, either that you're loading or you are not, you still need to have a proper GIT, which is going to cost you a lot of money, because you look at the value of the product and you look at the value of the insurance. Thank you, Richard, for that.
Thanks, Leo. And you touched on a very important point there, your fixed costs. So even if the truck is standing in your yard waiting for a load, you're still paying your monthly installment to the bank, your driver, your insurance, all of those costs. And before you've driven 1 kilometer, you've incurring all those costs. And then once the wheels start turning, then your variable costs start coming in. Your fuel, which is becoming a very, very high proportion of the operating cost. Your drivers' overtime, night outs, tire costs, you name it. So it's an expensive business. And I understand from the industry, from pretty good sources, that despite the cost of fuel going up dramatically, and I've heard from a good source that they're talking about diesel going up another R3 a litre next month. The rates are not going up in relation to that. So the transporters are getting squeezed in between. Their costs are rising. The consignor or the clients are not prepared to pay any or very little additional rates. So you as the transporter are getting squeezed in between. So it's a tough business out there. And when you go up into the DRC, I know of transporters that have stopped going to the DRC because the roads are in such bad condition, or there literally are no roads. So you've got all the border delays that you've got to get through. And then when you get, far north, you have all these issues around road conditions. And when you get into the DRC, they drive on the other side of the road. So your driver's now swapped over and has got to drive on what we would call the wrong side of the road. And all those sort of things seem to challenge the transporters. But there's lots of people running vehicles. If you, again, travel at N1, you'll see a lot of transporters are now going through Botswana to go directly into Zambia, to skip going through Zimbabwe. So there's different routes, but they have their own challenges. So yeah, I know we're trying to encourage people to get into the industry, but if you're going to get into the industry, go in with your eyes wide open. That's really my overarching comment. Just be aware that it's not an easy business. Some people have made lots of money out of it. Some people have lost lots of money. So be aware. All right. So just going back to our subject on dangerous goods. So we spoke about road tankers. We've spent quite a lot of time on that. The others is your basic, your granular type products, like your calcium carbide, would be packed into 60-litre open top conical drums, similar to what on your screen. It's got a separate lid, and it's got a clamp around the top. So again, with your calcium carbide, they'd fill that drum. They would then, and I'm not sure how they'd do it, but they would then purge all the oxygen out, put the lid on, and clamp it up so that it's an airtight seal. And that's the other method that they transport calcium carbide. One's in bulk, and the other would be in that sort of container. And I would imagine a lot of your other products would go in similar, but that's the one I'm aware of. Yeah, then the other one is your packages. We touched on this a bit at the last session, I think. I just want to go into a bit more detail on that. On your packages, if you're transporting dangerous goods, the packages must be approved packaging. You'll see in the little highlight that I've put down there. So that package, that box, has got a diamond on the side, which is a flammable liquid diamond. So the packaging must be marked. And then on the side closest to you, in the little circle that I've put down, you'll see a little UN sign and some numbers, and I'll explain what those mean. But that UN little circle with the U and the N in it indicates that that packaging is UN approved. So there's a whole process to get that UN approval. There's only one packaging company in South Africa that is UN approved, or can manufacture UN approved packaging. So it's a very specialist field. That package, before it can go into production, has to go through goes through drop tests and water tests and all sorts of things, depending on what it's going to be loading, what it's going to be carrying. So it is a very intense process. It's not just a box. It's a box which meets a large number of requirements. And the same as the little drum on the right, that would also have to go through the various tests and also have a UN accreditation or UN number, and that it's been through the various tests before it goes into production and to be sold into the market. So that little UN number, sorry, as I say, so packages must be UN approved. The quality of the packaging must be of high quality to meet that UN approval. There is reconditioned packaging available, but just be careful. It may have a UN number, but you need to ensure that that quality of that reconditioning has been done correctly, that it still complies with the UN requirements. Some of this, not only the recondition, but your packaging, if it's not good quality, can have leaks and failures in transits, especially where the roads are poor and the load is getting bumped around. Drums or packages are rubbing against each other. We can start getting failures. And then also the load securing. If that load is not well secured and the load is starting to move, and that can also lead to your packaging failures. And as we said, friction, the loads the packages rubbing against each other, generating friction, generating heat. And if you're transporting one of your class 4 products, you could get a fire starting from that heat that's generated from your packaging. Not going to go into this in great detail, but just to give you an idea. So that number that we saw on the side of the little box, on the box, the number looks something like this. So we could see on that box, on your screen now, is the UN brand, or let's call it the UN United Nations packaging symbol. On the far left, the next couple of numbers and letters is the UN code. For this one is for a fiberboard box. And if you look on the far right, you'll see under types of packaging, the number 4 shows you that it's a box. The G, which you go further down, tells you that it's a fiberboard box. And the V, what does the V tell us? Can't remember. I think it might be on the next screen. No, okay, sorry. So that whole string of numbers tells you what that product is, what that packaging is designed for, what it can be used for. So for example, the next one tells you the packing group and the maximum gross mass. Then there's an S, is it a solid or, so this one is for solids. The The next one is your last two digits of the year of manufacture. So this was a 2008 manufacture. The state or country authorizing mark, this one was the USA. If it was manufactured in South Africa, it would have ZA. So it's your, let's call it your international code. You go to Zimbabwe, you're driving a South African car, you should have a ZA, a sticker on the back of your car. So this packaging of manufactured in South Africa would have ZA there. And then the last number would be the manufacturer certifying packaging. So United Nations would give your company a code which indicates that your company has been approved. So all of that information has to go into the packaging that you are manufacturing. So as I said earlier, it's quite a process. Lots of hurdles that you got to get over before you can start manufacturing and producing UN approved packaging. But yeah, this is your, let's call it your guarantee that it has been approved. Yeah, and then there's it continues down as we the X was your, in the second group of numbers is your packing group for 1, 2, or 3, or if it's a Y, it's only a 2 or 3, or Z, it was only be for packing group 3. Then the 13 would be your gross weight, and then there's years of manufacture and origins, and so quite an involved process. So it's not you as a transporter directly related, but if you're going to be transporting dangerous goods in package form, you need to make sure that your supplier is giving you the products in these approved packaging. Otherwise, you may land up with a risk of damage or fire or whatever, and then your insurer might turn around and say, well, you didn't follow the requirements, so your claim has been repudiated. So again, it's always something to bear in mind before you jump into transporting dangerous goods. Make sure you've covered all your bases. We've spoken about placarding previously. I said I was in Polokwane on last week. On the way back, I took a photograph of this vehicle. It is carrying dangerous goods. It's not carrying the dangerous goods we're talking about. That symbol, we'll get to it in a later session, is a miscellaneous. It's black and white stripes. It's a class 9 miscellaneous. What I want to take you back, the placarding on the vehicles is the standard that specifies what that placarding must look like, what colors, shapes, etc., which we touched on previously. The SANS 10232 Part 1. It says the vehicle placarding and documentation shall at all times be an accurate reflection of the dangerous goods being transported. So if you look at that placard on that vehicle, and I was relatively close to the vehicle, is that a 3077 or is it an 8077? It's not that clear. The telephone numbers, emergency phone numbers are very dirty, and you can barely see the diamond. You can see it, but it's not clear. So just that poor quality of that placard. If your traffic officer is on the ball, you're going to get about R1,000 fine per placard because they are not clearly visible. So it carries on. The full placard, including the 10mm border, I think that has got its 10mm border, shall be clearly visible from the roadside. whether directly fixed on the vehicle or supported by means of a permanently fixed frame. This way that this placard is attached to this vehicle is actually illegal, because it's not fixed to the vehicle, it's fixed to the load, or it's not in a permanently fixed frame. So there should be a frame on the back of the trailer where that placard is then fitted into that frame. When we talk about fixed on the vehicle, that would be, for example, on a fuel tanker, where that placard is stuck on the tanker because it is dedicated to that particular product. As we said last time around, there's different products that can go under the same UN number, but those placards are literally, they are decals which are stuck to the tanker. This one is not. This is a decal. I'm not even sure how it's being held on there, but technically that is illegal. And the last clause on the left-hand side, the placard shall be clean, legible, and not defaced at all times. That's what I said. It's not clean, it's not legible. So a poor example of placarding on that vehicle. This vehicle is also be coming out of the DRC. It would have taken maybe sulfur up. The other product that is coming out of the DRC related to the copper mines is oh no, I've gone blank. No, I can't think. But this is also an export. It's going into the electrical manufacturing business. A lot of it is being exported to China, and so there's a fair quantity of coming out of Congo, and it is an environmentally hazardous substance. So it's not highly dangerous, but it is classed as environmentally hazardous substance. And then I think my last slide is I've shown you a similar slide to this previously. This is an updated slide around your placarding, explaining how your placarding should look. Also, again, acknowledgements to Foresight Publications. So, as we've said before, must have a placard on both sides of the vehicle, whether it's a tanker or a flat deck. It must have a placard on either side of the vehicle, and one at the rear, and an orange diamond on the front. And so that's your, let's call it the top half of the slide. It demonstrates a tanker. The bottom left demonstrates what we'd call a rigid vehicle. So it's not it's a smaller vehicle, but it's still over 3,500 kilograms, which is the split between a light vehicle and a heavy vehicle in terms of the Road Traffic Act. Same thing, it must have three placards, one on either side and one at the rear, and a orange diamond on the front. And then in the right bottom corner of the slide is your light delivery vehicles, or what we call it, what in South Africa we would often call a bakkie. That's where a vehicle of less than 3,500 kilograms can go with half size or reduced size placards. And there it gives you the dimensions of those placards. The information, the colors, and everything are all exactly the same. It's just a smaller placard to fit onto a smaller vehicle. And I think I said to you when we were talking about gases, a lot of the smaller vehicles that are doing gas deliveries around town to some of sort of restaurants and smaller facilities would have placarding relating to LPG for them to be able to transport that gas. And yeah, that's the end of my slides. But Lebo, if there's any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them. And see if we can be of any more assistance.
Richard, I'll be checking on LinkedIn and Facebook to see if there are any questions. I haven't seen any up to so far, but now the comments that I'm getting, that is very insightful. I always wonder when you have this conversation if people are becoming more scared.
Yeah, yeah, correct.
I'm becoming more scared about the industry, because I've been told before that, the more we have these sessions, besides this one, is the more people reconsider the industry. And I said, believe me, rather be an educated before you go into this industry, because it's worth it, but you need to understand, the basics around
Yes.
what drives it. Because in any organization, all we want to do is making sure that we get the products to the customer on time, safely, and ensuring that we take care of the drivers, looking at their health as well. But also we want to be efficient in terms of how we manage our costs. And in all of that, you have to take into consideration everything that Richard is telling us. Because everything that you're seeing, it's cost, everything that you're seeing is expectation from the client for you to know when you penetrate the industry. So Richard, we always appreciate your additional insight, input. For everyone that has logged in, LinkedIn, Facebook, have you got any more questions before we close up? Those are the contact details for Richard. Richard is very instrumental in helping organizations from the safety perspective. In fact, let me not just say safety check, check in totality. This industry requires, especially in the chemical, manufacturing industry, requires a lot of safety policies, squash audits as well. And I know that Richard is very instrumental in that he can help your organization if you want to be squash audited. So if you're looking for more details, more contact, and more information from ourselves, you can contact us at Awiska, at SyncPoint, coaching at awiska.org, or coaching at syncpoint.co.za. We are there to support you. Those that have connected, if you are connecting with us, we are also on LinkedIn. We are also on Instagram. We have our weekly session on transport management in terms of tracking all the modes of transport. Don't miss out, be part of our community. We are always looking forward to sharing insights with you. With regards to today's session with Richard, we will definitely share the soft copy and the recording of our session. Richard, I'm not sure if on your side, if there are any last comments from your side before we close the session.
No, Lebo, I don't think there is, but yeah, just to once again repeat, go, if you're going into the business, go into it with your eyes wide open. Don't think it's an easy good money, because there's lots of risks that go with it. So that's just my closing comments. But thank you once again for the opportunity, and I look forward to our next session, where we're going to be talking about Class 5 products, which have their own issues around them, but we'll go into those details next time we meet. Thank you, Lebo.
Thank you so much, Richard. Guys, please don't miss out on our next session. Like I said, it's various sessions, various series of discussions on the movement of dangerous goods. We have spoken about the gas, the liquid, as well in terms of transportation, and what is expected from yourself as business people, and also yourself as a career person out there understanding the industry. Thank you again for joining us. If you have any more questions, like we said, please drop us a note, and we'll definitely revert back to you. See you next month on the same discussions of the movement of dangerous goods. Thank you so much, Richard. Have yourself a great week ahead, everyone.
Thank you, Lebo. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.